I'm Anna Richardson, 28 years old, and up until recently, my life was a fairy tale. Or so I thought. The memory of my wedding day is still vivid in my mind. My family, although supportive, had reservations. Their biggest concern? Gregory Hartman, my husband, had been divorced once before, and his first marriage had barely lasted a year. Irreconcilable differences, they said. But I was in love, and love, I believed, could conquer all. My father's eyes were moist when he gave me away. "Be happy, Anna," he whispered, his voice laced with unspoken worries. "Gregory, she's in your hands now." Gregory had smiled, his confidence unwavering. "I won't let you down, sir," he had promised. But promises are like glass, easily shattered. This morning, like every morning since our wedding, I woke up to find Gregory's side of the bed cold and empty. I used to wake up earlier to prepare breakfast and see him off to work with a kiss. Now the kisses had stopped, and so had the warm goodbyes. "Gregory, breakfast is ready," I called out, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. "Yeah," was all he grunted in response, not even glancing my way as he grabbed his coat and headed for the door. The difference was stark. Before marriage, Gregory was attentive, loving. Now he was like a stranger, a cold, distant figure occupying the same space, but sharing none of the warmth we once had. I tried to brush off the nagging feeling of unease. Maybe it's just the stress of his job, I told myself. But deep down, I knew something was fundamentally wrong. The turning point came today, in the most unexpected way. Gregory had left his phone on the kitchen table. Usually, I respected his privacy, but something compelled me to glance at the screen when it lit up with a new message. "Thanks for last night. Can't wait to see you again." The sender's name was Claire. A wave of nausea hit me as I stared at the message, the room spinning around me. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of anger, betrayal, and disbelief coursing through me. This was it. The moment everything came crashing down. The man I loved, the man I had married, was not who I thought he was. I felt a bitter laugh escape my lips. All those times I had defended him, believed in him, and he was betraying me. My family's concerns, my friends' subtle warnings, everything made sense now. I knew what I had to do. The thought of divorce had crossed my mind before, but I had pushed it away, hoping things would get better. But not anymore. I couldn't live a lie. As I stood there, lost in my thoughts, Gregory walked back in, having forgotten his phone. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, fear? It didn't matter. "Anna, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern that seemed so fake now. "Nothing," I replied, my voice steady, just thinking about how things change. He didn't press further, simply grabbing his phone and leaving. But in that moment, I made up my mind. I would confront him, and I would free myself from this sham of a marriage. Little did Gregory know, he had just pushed me to the edge, and I was ready to push back. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the computer screen. Work used to be a place of solace, a distraction from the growing troubles at home. But today it felt like a cage. My thoughts kept drifting back to Gregory, to that message from Claire, and to the love that once felt so real. It was here, in this very office, where I had first met Gregory Hartman. He was charming, confident, and his laughter was infectious. I remember how he would always find an excuse to pass by my desk, how our coffee breaks became frequent and longer. Back then, I was just Anna, an employee in my father's company, not the CEO's daughter. When Gregory found out about my family, I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but he quickly masked it with a smile. "You're full of surprises, Anna," he had said. That moment made me believe he loved me for me, not for my background. But now, as I reflected on our past, I couldn't help but wonder if I had been naive. The Gregory I knew before our marriage was caring, attentive, and always put me first. The Gregory I lived with now was a stranger. "Anna, you okay?" My colleague Sarah peered at me with concern. "Just a bit distracted," I replied, forcing a smile. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind was in turmoil. Gregory's change was gradual but undeniable. He started coming home late, often missing dinner. Our conversations dwindled to monosyllables. His once warm embrace turned cold, and his kisses disappeared. But the worst part was his indifference. The way he would shrug off my attempts at conversation, the way he ignored my presence, it was like living with a ghost. "Anna, you've been different since you got married," Sarah had once commented. I brushed it off, not wanting to admit that my marriage was crumbling. Today, my denial was shattered. The evidence was there on Gregory's phone. The late nights, the lack of interest, it all made sense. He was having an affair. As the day came to an end, I packed my things and headed home. The house felt empty, just like my heart. I needed answers, and I needed to confront Gregory. When he finally came home, I was ready. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Gregory looked surprised but nodded. "What's wrong?" "It's about us, Gregory. About our marriage," I began. "I know about Claire." For a moment, Gregory looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then he composed himself. "Anna, I can explain," he started, but I raised my hand to stop him. "I don't want your excuses, Gregory. I want the truth. Why did you marry me? Was it ever real, or was it all just a game to you?" Gregory sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Anna, it's complicated." "No, it's simple. You lied, you cheated," I countered, the hurt evident in my voice. "We talked, or rather, I talked and Gregory listened. He tried to explain, to justify his actions, but his words fell on deaf ears. The trust was broken, and with it, our marriage. That night, I made a decision. I would file for divorce. I couldn't stay in a loveless, deceitful marriage. I deserved better, and I was determined to get it. As I lay in bed alone in the darkness, I realized this was just the beginning. I had to brace myself for what was to come. But one thing was clear. I would not let Gregory Hartman ruin my life. The morning light crept through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. It was a stark contrast to the coldness that had settled in my heart. Today was the day I had decided to confront Gregory about everything. His infidelity, his indifference, the sham our marriage had become. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would say it. I needed him to understand the depth of my hurt, the betrayal I felt. But more than that, I needed closure. I needed to know why. As the day dragged on, my resolve only grew stronger. When Gregory finally came home, I was ready. I had prepared dinner, not as an act of reconciliation, but as a setting for our final conversation as husband and wife. "Gregory, we need to talk," I said firmly as we sat down. He looked up, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "What now, Anna?" "It's about us. About our marriage," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know about your affair with Claire. I saw the messages." For a moment, Gregory was silent. Then he let out a heavy sigh. "Anna, it's not what you think." "Then what is it, Gregory? Enlighten me, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me since the day we got married." Gregory shifted uncomfortably. "It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," I challenged, my voice rising slightly. Gregory looked at me, his expression hardening. "Fine. You want the truth? I was bored, Anna. Our marriage became a routine, and I needed something more. I felt as if I had been slapped." "So you decided to have an affair because you were bored?" "Yes, I guess I did," he admitted, his voice void of remorse. The pain in my chest was almost physical. "And what about our vows? What about everything we promised each other?" Gregory shrugged. "Things change, Anna. People change." I stared at him, my vision blurring with tears. This was not the man I married. This was someone else, someone cold and unrecognizable. "You know what, Gregory? I can't do this anymore. I can't be with someone who has so little regard for me, for our marriage. I want a divorce." Gregory's expression didn't change. "If that's what you want." It was said with such indifference it stung more than any argument could. I had hoped for some sign of the man I once loved, some indication that he cared. But there was nothing. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The reality of what had transpired sunk in. I was going to be alone, divorced at 28. But amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was also a sense of relief. I was finally freeing myself from a loveless marriage. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and legal consultations. I moved back into my old room at my parents' house, seeking comfort in the familiarity of my childhood home. My father was supportive, though I could see the worry in his eyes. "You'll get through this, Anna," he assured me. "You're stronger than you think." And deep down, I knew he was right. This was not the end of my story. It was just a new beginning. A beginning where I could find myself again, away from the shadows of a marriage that was never meant to be. As I signed the last of the divorce papers, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. I was free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope for the future. The world outside seemed to carry on as usual, but for me, everything had changed. The finality of signing those divorce papers marked the end of a chapter in my life. A chapter filled with love turned sour, dreams turned to dust. In the weeks that followed, I found myself oscillating between relief and bouts of sadness. I had been so sure that Gregory was my forever, but now I was starting to rebuild my life without him. Despite the hurt, a part of me yearned for closure. I needed to understand why Gregory did what he did. Why he chose to betray our vows, our love. I needed answers, not for him, but for myself. Driven by this need, I decided to hire a private investigator. It was a drastic step, but the truth was worth it. The PI I hired was a seasoned professional, and within days, he had gathered enough evidence to paint a clear picture of Gregory's infidelity. The report was detailed, complete with timestamps and photographs. It showed Gregory and Claire, his co-worker, together at various locations, their body language unmistakably intimate. My heart ached as I looked at the images, but it also solidified my decision to leave him. Armed with this evidence, I confronted Gregory again. This time, there was no dinner, no pretense of civility. We met in a neutral location, a quiet park where the autumn leaves painted the ground in hues of orange and brown. "Gregory, look at these," I said, handing him the folder of evidence. He flipped through it, his face unreadable. When he finally looked up, his eyes were cold. "What do you want, Anna?" "I want you to admit it," I said, my voice firm. "Admit that you cheated, that our marriage was a lie to you." Gregory sighed, closing the folder. "Yes, I cheated, but our marriage wasn't a lie, Anna. I just needed more." His confession, though expected, still hurt. "More? I gave you everything, Gregory. I loved you with all my heart. And I appreciated that," he said, almost too casually. "But sometimes love isn't enough." His words cut deep, but they also brought clarity. This was who Gregory was, a man for whom love was a convenience, not a commitment. "I hope one day you realize what you've lost," I said, standing up. "Goodbye, Gregory." As I walked away, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and liberation. I had loved Gregory with all I had, but now I was ready to let go. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. In the days that followed, I dove into work, finding solace in the routine. My colleagues, sensing the change, offered support in their own ways. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone. One evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone rang. It was the private investigator. "Miss Richardson, there's something you need to see," he said, his tone serious. Curious and slightly apprehensive, I agreed to meet him. What he showed me next was the last piece of the puzzle, the final blow to any lingering feelings I had for Gregory. It wasn't just about infidelity. Gregory had been planning to leave me long before our marriage crumbled. He had been manipulating me, using me, all along. The evidence was irrefutable, and it shattered any remaining illusions I had about him. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that this was truly the end. There would be no more tears for Gregory Hartman. He had made his choices, and now I was making mine. I chose to move forward, to heal, and to find happiness again. Gregory was a part of my past, but he would not define my future. The chill of the early morning air was a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. Today was the day I would confront Gregory and Claire together. I had arranged a meeting under the guise of finalizing our divorce proceedings, but my true intent was to expose the web of lies and deceit they had woven. As I walked into the cafe where we agreed to meet, I saw them sitting together, looking uncomfortably close. Gregory noticed me first, his eyes widening slightly. Claire, younger and seemingly oblivious to the gravity of the situation, gave me a disdainful look. "Thank you for coming," I began, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I think it's important we all understand the situation clearly." Gregory cleared his throat. "Anna, I've already agreed to the divorce terms. There's no need for further discussion." I smiled, a bitter, humorless smile. "It's not about the divorce, Gregory. It's about the truth." I turned to Claire. "Did he tell you that he was planning to leave me from the start? That our marriage was just a convenience for him?" Claire's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "What are you talking about? We're in love." "In love?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. "Is that what he told you? Because that's what he told me too." Gregory's face was a mask of frustration. "Anna, this isn't necessary." "Oh, but it is," I countered. "You see, I've learned a lot these past few weeks, about both of you." I laid out the evidence the private investigator had gathered, photos, messages, all painting a clear picture of their affair. But more than that, the evidence showed how calculated Gregory had been, how he had used me, used his position at my father's company to further his own agenda. Claire's face paled as she looked through the evidence. This isn't what you told me, Gregory." Gregory was silent, his usual eloquence gone. He had been exposed, and he knew it. "You see, Claire, Gregory is a master at manipulation," I said, my voice cold. "He doesn't love, he uses people. And once he's done, he discards them." Claire looked between me and Gregory, her expression one of dawning realization and horror. "And you, Gregory," I turned to him, "you've lost everything. Your wife, your lover, your position at the company. Was it worth it?" Gregory's gaze was unfocused, his usual composure shattered. I didn't think." "That's right. You didn't think," I interrupted. "You didn't think about the consequences, about the people you hurt. But now, you have to live with those choices." With that, I stood up, my heart still aching, but my spirit unbroken. "Goodbye, Gregory. I hope one day you understand the damage you've done." As I walked out of the cafe, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm, golden light on the world. It was a new day, a new beginning, and for the first time in a long time I felt a sense of peace. Gregory and Claire's voices faded behind me, their words inconsequential. I was moving on, leaving the past and its pain behind. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, ready to rebuild my life, one step at a time. In the days that followed the cafe confrontation, a sense of calm settled over me. It was as if facing Gregory and Claire, seeing their reactions to the truth, had lifted a heavy burden from my shoulders. My heartache didn't vanish, but it transformed, becoming a source of strength rather than a weakness. The legal proceedings for the divorce moved quickly, given the evidence of Gregory's infidelity. It was a straightforward case, and soon I was officially free from the man who had turned my life upside down. Along with the decree came a sense of vindication. Gregory was ordered to pay a significant sum in alimony. It wasn't about the money for me, it was about him facing the consequences of his actions. Meanwhile, Claire faced her own repercussions. Word of the affair and the evidence I had gathered spread through the company. Claire's parents, deeply embarrassed by their daughter's involvement in such a scandal, reprimanded her severely. Her colleagues, who once respected her, now looked at her with disdain. She offered her resignation, unable to bear the weight of judgmental stares and whispers. As for Gregory, his downfall was swift and severe. My father, upon learning the full extent of his betrayal, was furious. He had welcomed Gregory into our family, into his company, only to be repaid with deceit. There was talk of firing him, but before any official action could be taken, Gregory resigned. The shame and guilt were too much for him to bear. I watched these events unfold from a distance, feeling a mix of pity and relief. Pity for the pathetic end to Gregory's schemes, and relief that I was no longer part of his twisted world. My family was my rock during this time. They welcomed me back with open arms, offering comfort and support as I healed. My job at the company provided a much-needed distraction, and my colleagues' kindness reminded me that I wasn't alone in this journey. Life was slowly getting back on track. I found joy in small things: coffee with friends, quiet evenings with my family, the sense of accomplishment after a productive day at work. The pain of the past was still there, but it was no longer all-consuming. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, my father joined me. He put an arm around my shoulders, a silent show of support. "You've handled everything with such grace, Anna," he said softly. "I'm proud of you." I leaned into his embrace, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you and Mom. You're stronger than you think, Anna. And remember, this experience doesn't define you. It's just a part of your story." He was right. This experience, as painful as it was, had taught me a lot about myself, about resilience and forgiveness. It was a part of my story, but it wasn't the whole story. As the sky turned a deep shade of orange, I made a silent vow to myself. I would move forward, embrace life, and open my heart to new possibilities. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. The days turned into weeks, and slowly the scars of my past began to heal. The journey wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt and pangs of loneliness, but with each passing day, I grew stronger, more resilient. My life had taken an unexpected turn, and in the process, I had discovered a strength I never knew I had. The experience with Gregory, as painful as it was, taught me invaluable lessons about trust, love, and self-worth. I learned that love should never be taken for granted, nor should it be a one-sided sacrifice. I understood the importance of mutual respect and the courage it takes to walk away from a situation that no longer serves you. Most importantly, I realized that my happiness and well-being were in my own hands. As I moved forward, I found comfort in my work, joy in the company of friends and family, and peace in my own solitude. The world, once gray and bleak, was now full of color and possibilities. Occasionally, I would hear news about Gregory. He had moved to another city, a shadow of the man he once was. There was a part of me that felt sorry for him, but I knew that our paths were never meant to cross again. Claire, too, had moved on, finding a new job in a different company. I hoped that she, too, would learn from this experience and find a better path in life. One evening, while sipping tea in my favorite cafe, a thought struck me. This was where Gregory and I had our first date, where our story began. It felt like a lifetime ago, a chapter from a different book. Yet here I was, not broken or bitter, but wiser and more whole than I had ever been. As I looked out the window, watching people go about their lives, I realized that life was full of second chances. It was never too late to start anew, to write a new story. And maybe, just maybe, love would find me again. But this time, I would be ready. I would enter it with open eyes, a strong heart, and the wisdom gained from my past. The cafe door chimed, and a burst of laughter filled the room. Life was moving on, and so was I. With a smile, I turned my gaze back to the bustling street, my heart filled with hope for what the future might hold.
My name is Tracy. I'm 39 years old, and I enjoy watching movies with my husband during breaks from parenting and household chores. I feel fortunate that we can keep the romance alive and not just be husband and wife but lovers, like before we were married. My friends often tell me, my husband treats me more like a mom than a lover or wife. Tracy, I'm so jealous. It's not bad being in a couple's mood no matter the age. I hope we can keep this relationship going in the future. We never fight, but there was one time when our relationship nearly reached a breaking point. It happened when we were still in our 20s. Brian said, "Should we get married soon?" About 6 months into our relationship. Brian, who was still just my boyfriend at the time, suddenly proposed. He said it as casually as if he were suggesting going to the store. He proposed while we were watching TV in my room, so naturally, there was no mood. And it wasn't the romantic proposal I had dreamed of. But this genuine, unforced proposal felt very us, and I liked that. I immediately accepted his proposal, and we decided to get married. We had been dating for 6 months. I didn't know everything about him, but I knew his character well enough. I thought I could be happy with him, but then, 3 weeks after his proposal, he said with a troubled look, "Something complicated has come up." His unusually exhausted expression made me worried, too. "What's wrong?" I asked. "My sister, she wants to meet you." "Huh?" "We'll go to greet her for the marriage, right?" "We'll meet her then." "Yes, but she wants to meet just us before the greeting." "Oh, that's nice." "I'm happy she wants to meet." "Well, it's a bit complicated with my family." "What do you mean?" Brian reluctantly started to explain something quite serious for me. Who was about to marry into his family. Apparently, his family was quite wealthy. His father had won the lottery when he was single, and used that money to start a candy company in their hometown. Gradually, their store became established in the community, and now they have second and third stores in the county. "Wow," I said, and he chuckled bitterly, "Just nouveau riche." His tone was harsher than humble. "That's not like him. You don't have to talk about your family like that." "No, that's really how it is. My dad's sense of money is skewed because of that sudden wealth. And my sister, she's like that, too. Oh. I can't explain it well, but because they're such a troublesome family. I'm actually worried about introducing you to them during the marriage meeting. He's usually a calm person who never speaks ill of others. It was surprising and increasingly worrying to hear him speak so harshly about his own family. What kind of troublesome family were they, I wondered. But I'm generally positive. I told him, it's okay, I'd love to meet your sister since we have the chance. He reluctantly agreed, if you say so. So came the day I first met his sister, Jenny. I was wrong. I was speechless at the tyrannical behavior of the sister-in-law. She looked every bit the wealthy person, from her appearance. Even I, who am not familiar with brands, could tell she was carrying a famous brand bag. And her accessories included large gemstones. I couldn't tell the brands of her clothes and shoes since they didn't have visible logos. But they must all be branded, too. Why do I assume that? Because Brian had told me beforehand that his sister didn't work and was still receiving an allowance from her parents while living at home, even though she was nearing 30. Such a winner in the unemployed world, a super elite unemployed. She said to me during the meal, I had someone I wanted Brian to marry. She's a friend of mine, from a wealthy family, too. Okay. Stop it, sis. Confused me, and the sister-in-law who was proceeding with the conversation as if she didn't care. And Brian chiding her, quickly cooled the atmosphere between the three of us. When I told you that discussion was over, Brian said, and she snapped, don't talk back to your sister. You should just listen to what your sister says. The younger son born later. Marriage is my choice. No, you always sulk so easily. You're really the most selfish one in our family. In this house, a reasonable argument is interpreted as selfishness. And it seems they are people who don't hesitate to impose unreasonable demands. Brian sighed deeply with genuine annoyance. We've met with Tracy now, so let's go home, and he got up from his seat. He went to pay first. I quickly followed him and took out my wallet. Meanwhile, the sister-in-law made no move to take out hers, even though she was the one who had invited us today. The younger brother who was invited ended up paying for his sister's meal. I couldn't help but think that it's really the sister-in-law who is the selfish one. Give me your contact information, Tracy. Saying this, the sister-in-law reached for her phone, not even bothering to pull out her wallet. Yes. Reluctantly, I gave her my contact because she's his sister after all. Brian had told me repeatedly not to give it to her. But she's going to be my family by marriage. I couldn't just snub her. However, I was wrong again. 2 days after our meeting, I received an email from the sister-in-law that read, I've decided my brother will marry my friend after all. I've arranged for them to meet, so please step aside. I was alone in my room when I read it, but I couldn't help but say aloud, what is this? Should I reply? Ignoring it didn't seem right. But what could I possibly respond to such a message? As I was pondering this, more emails from the sister-in-law kept coming in. I do not accept you as part of our family. You and he are not a good match. I want him to marry someone decent so that she can support me after our parents are gone. Don't interfere. It seemed she had no intention of working, and fully expected her brother to support her in the future. I didn't reply to her emails and immediately informed Brian. As soon as he saw the emails, his face went pale, and upon questioning him, he confessed. My sister introduced her friend to me. I thought the emails were just lies and threats to break us up. But apparently, she was serious. What about me? Am I going to be dumped? There's no way that's going to happen. Brian exclaimed angrily. Sorry for raising my voice. No, it's okay. But I have no intention of marrying her friend. And what's with these emails? I don't even plan to support my sister. Yet she's making all these arrangements behind my back. Seeing him so angry at his sister's actions, I felt relieved. Unlike his sister, he was truly a decent person. 2 weeks passed. He told me to block his sister's emails, but I thought that would be too much and didn't do it. Since then, I haven't received any more emails from her. He also firmly refused to date the woman his sister was pushing. The situation was troublesome because the woman took a liking to him. And the sister-in-law was eager to set them up. But you can't just proceed with something ignoring the person's will. Unexpected obstacles had come up. But today was finally the day of our marriage introduction. That meant meeting his parents. My parents were also coming. Brian suggested, maybe we should just call it off? It's not going to end well anyway. But that wasn't acceptable. I wanted to do things properly. Just because the sister-in-law is crazy doesn't mean his parents aren't respectable. He told me not to expect much. But you don't know until you meet them. However, it was a mistake for the third time. Nice to meet you. You're Tracy? Yes, nice to meet you. Please take care of me. Brian's father looked at me sternly. That look alone told me they didn't think well of me. Brian's mother gave a small nod, and right next to her. The sister-in-law smirked and said, "Long time no see, Tracy." There was zero welcoming mood. It was a surprising no response. How could they dislike me without even meeting me? It must be the sister-in-law's doing. Where are Tracy's parents? My mother is working today. She'll join us as soon as she finishes. My father is stuck in traffic. I'm sorry for making you wait on such an important day. Really now, we're taking time out of our busy schedules to be here. With that, Brian's father snorted. I could only apologize, feeling down, but Brian reassured me, don't worry about it. Trying to ease the tension, I suggested, shall we start the meal? Of course, said his father. It felt uncomfortable, though. Such a tense atmosphere. I've been looking forward to the food here, said the sister-in-law excitedly as she looked around the restaurant. Brian's mother added, I wanted to come here too, but it's always been hard to get a reservation. Today's meeting place was a famous old high-end restaurant in the neighboring town, featured on TV. The French cuisine made from organic vegetables and local fresh meat and fish is superb. And despite the price, it has many repeat customers. Reservations are necessary, and it's so popular that it's hard to book, making a second visit difficult for many. Trying to improve my image, Brian explained to his family. Tracy managed to get the reservation. Wow, you managed to get it. His mother looked surprised. I laughed. Thanks to him, the atmosphere seemed a bit more relaxed at first. That's good, I thought, and then. By the way, what do your parents do for work, Tracy? Brian's father asked. I don't even know, Brian added. What? You don't know what your girlfriend's parents do? I'm not dating her parents, so it doesn't matter. What if her family wants you to take over their business? Then that's fine by me, I guess. You know, Howard may be the heir, but you're also an important son to our family, Brian's father said. In response to his father's words, Brian retorted with annoyance. You mean an important tool, right? It's my life, let me live it how I want. Howard, who was absent that day, is his brother. Unlike Brian, who often clashes with his family, Howard seems to get along very well with them and has been directly appointed by his father to take over the company. Really, I wanted to stabilize the company by marrying him off to a wealthy girl. His father grumbled. Jenny chimed in condescendingly, such a disgrace to the parents. I don't want to be lectured by a sister who's still clinging to her parents' apron strings, Brian retorted, causing his mother to remain silent. The atmosphere was terrible. Girls should just stay home and take care of the house. Don't worry, Jenny, I'll find you a good match soon enough. Papa, you're the best. With that, Jenny smiled, not entirely displeased by her father's words. Seeing this, I thought, like father, like daughter. Brian sighed. It's embarrassing how his disreputable family behaves in their usual manner in front of his fiancée. So, getting back to the subject, Tracy's parents are. Just as his father tried to steer the conversation back, a waiter appeared and announced, "Your guest has arrived," followed by my father peeking through. Sorry for being late, my father apologized, dressed in a suit. Even the usually rude father-in-law couldn't afford to be disrespectful in front of my father, who was slightly older, managing only a terse, no. The roads were so congested, and my car isn't comfortable at all. My back is killing me from the long drive, my father laughed heartily. What kind of car do you drive? The father-in-law asked. A light truck. I'm a farmer, so I often need to carry soil. Can't really drive anything flashy. Thanks to that, I'm on my third light truck. Just keep buying them over and over. My father laughed again, while the father-in-law's face seemed permanently contorted. What did you say now? He demanded with a demonic glare, causing me and my father to look puzzled. Is there a problem with a light truck? Would a large pickup truck have been more acceptable? You said you're a farmer? Yes. My father nodded several times, visibly intimidated by the father-in-law's stare. In between, Brian said positively, "Oh, you're a farmer," and I smiled, "Yes." Unbelievable. The father-in-law stood up abruptly and slammed the table hard. Not only us, but other customers also looked shocked. Jenny was right, love marriages are worthless. Bringing such a despicable poor person into our family. I couldn't believe my ears. Is he calling me a despicable poor person? Isn't that extremely rude? Brian, cut ties with this woman right now. I will not accept her as my daughter-in-law. What? It's not up to you to choose my partner. No. Her family is nowhere near a match for ours. What do you mean not a match? You act like a local dignitary. But you're just nouveau riche from a lottery win. That's when my father stepped in. I'm sorry, but why must you say such things? The father-in-law snorted through his nose. Humph, if you don't even understand that, you're even less suitable as a spouse. It's just a farmer, you know? A farmer. What's wrong with being a farmer? Day in, day out, covered in mud, crawling on the ground just like a lowly citizen. Probably best friends with moles and worms. It's outrageous to come to a high-end restaurant in a light truck. Isn't it embarrassing that you've proven yourself to be such a poor person? With no common sense? I don't think my job is as lowly as you say, and while I might understand a dress code, I don't think there's one for cars. What's wrong with a light truck? After all, my parents and I are not the same entity. Oh please, the howling of the poor. Stop whining and go back to being poor. The marriage is off. With that, the father-in-law slammed the table again. Brian was arguing back. But it seemed there was no reasoning with this stubborn father-in-law. My father probably felt the same. Shall we go? He looked at me as if to say, "Give up," and I steeled myself. "Yeah." Taking my response, he stood up. "Then, we'll be leaving. Go, go. I'll pay for the meal of the poor, so just disappear quickly." The father-in-law shouted abusively. Brian was angry, demanding his father stop, but his words fell on deaf ears. "Don't defy your parents," he screamed, and then threw a framed picture from the wall at us. The sudden display of violence from the father-in-law froze us all in place. Even the waiter, carrying soup, was stunned by the overturned bowl. Jenny seemed a bit surprised but smirked, "Serves you right," as she looked at us. Such a spiteful nature. The mother-in-law, witnessing all this, did nothing to admonish Jenny or her husband. Brian, dismayed by the situation, apologized. "Sorry for making you feel bad. I'll get in touch properly," and urged me to go home for the day. After leaving the restaurant with my father, my cell phone rang a short while later as we drove away. The caller was the sister-in-law, Jenny. Why would she call at this time? I thought. And while I casually checked my bag to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything, my phone rang again. "Dad, I'm getting a call from that lady over there." "Just ignore it." "But she's really persistent." "Look, it stopped, but now she's calling again." "Well, I guess you have to answer it then." I sighed, resigned, and answered the call from Jenny. "Hello? Jenny?" Finally, you answered. "Please, I'm begging you, come back to the restaurant." Jenny sounded nearly hysterical on the phone. What on earth was going on? Huh? What's suddenly come up? You were the ones who told us to leave. Well, I don't really understand. But the restaurant staff said they won't forgive you unless they apologize to you. Oh. Hearing that, I couldn't help but smile wryly. I see, that's what this is about. I chuckled inwardly, thinking things were getting interesting. Could it be that the picture frame that your father threw got broken? Yes. Not only that, but the spilled soup stained the painting inside it. Oh dear. That sounds like an expensive item was ruined. Now they're saying we have to compensate for it. But they might forgive you if you apologize. What kind of relationship do you have with the restaurant staff? They keep telling me to ask you directly, and won't tell me anything. That restaurant is run by our relatives. What? Didn't you find it strange? A popular restaurant that usually requires a year's reservation. And yet, we managed to book for 2 families within a month of the proposal. Now that you mention it. It was because it's run by relatives. We were lucky to get seats due to a cancellation. And by the way, my mother works there too. Remember the person who brought the soup? That was my mother. What? That person, she's the one saying you need to apologize. She probably saw everything and got angry on our behalf. I don't really understand, but please come back to the restaurant. I was about to say no when Jenny let out a small squeal. What now? Tracy? Please, I'm begging you, come back to the restaurant. Brian's father had taken the phone. Their pleas sounded so similar, I couldn't help but laugh a little. I decided to let my dad join the conversation and switched my phone to speaker mode. I refuse. Weren't you the one who told us to leave? I retorted with a smirk. I'm sorry. I had no idea you were affiliated with the restaurant. Why would you lie about being a farmer? I wasn't lying. My father is a farmer, and though he's listed as the owner, my aunt actually manages the place. If you had told me earlier. A daughter connected to this restaurant is certainly not a poor person. She's suitable for my son. Let's forget what happened today. And please come into our family. After what's been said, it's too late. What? Are you dissatisfied? It's irritating the way you're speaking. You haven't apologized, and as soon as you find the family is convenient for you, you flip your stance and say to come into your family. It's extremely unpleasant. You dare to act high and mighty. It's also your fault for not behaving like rich people. At that, my father chuckled as Brian's father started to get irate. Do you think acting like a rich person involves yelling? And intimidating someone you think is beneath you? What? What's so fun about flaunting your wealth? If that's all the joy you have, that's pretty sad. What do you mean, acting high and mighty? You're boasting about being wealthy, but what's the point? Is it enjoyable to be envied by others? Or do you want to increase your chances of being robbed? If so, that's quite an unusual hobby. I couldn't help but laugh at my father's pointed comments. Brian's father, clearly infuriated by the response, was huffing and puffing over the phone. My father could almost see his irritated face, and seemed to be enjoying provoking him. Did you deliberately make him angry, Dad? You're still such a mischief maker. Despite offering to accept the marriage, you disregard my generosity. If that's your idea of generosity, we don't need it. Just as my father firmly spoke, Brian's voice resonated through the room. I don't need Dad's approval anyway. I was taken aback and listened intently to the voice. What are you talking about, Brian? Coming out of nowhere, his father said, clearly annoyed. It's fine. Today is the last day I'll deal with Dad anyway. What? What do you mean? I want to marry Tracy, so I'm cutting ties with this family. That's why Dad doesn't need to approve our marriage. What? Do you think such selfishness is allowed? Do you really think you have the right to approve your child's marriage? If you leave the family, who will smooth over the issue with the damaged picture frame at that woman's house? That's why I'm leaving. I'm tired of being used. Brian's angry voice silenced his father. What am I to you, Dad? Expected to support my jobless sister, marry rich for the family. Build connections in case the business fails, never talk back. I'm not a slave. You're the one who never talks back, so I prepared the best life for you. Why would supporting a sister who doesn't work be considered the best life for me? The best life always seems to be reserved for her. That's, well, I know the reason behind our parents' unhappy marriage. What? My father and I were taken aback. I thought they just didn't talk much, but it seems Brian's parents really didn't get along. Dad, you think I'm not your child, don't you? That's. Brian's father stumbled over his words, and our expressions stiffened. You've been misunderstanding Mom, thinking she had an affair with the store manager? I heard it from Grandma, who passed away. That's not a misunderstanding. Mom was unusually close to that man back then. That's because you were hitting Mom even at the store out of stress from work. And the manager was just looking out for her. I don't know the real story. Mom is innocent. Everyone from that time said so, and my genes say the same. What? I had a DNA test done with Dad. The result showed a 99.9% probability that I am his biological son. A bit disappointing, though. What? Brian's father's voice faded, and his mother intervened. Why can't you? I had a DNA test done between Brian and you too. I showed you the results. But you didn't believe it. I can't believe a word that cheating woman says. Don't say things just because you're convinced of them. I've told you many times, I am innocent. His mother's voice was tearful, likely overwhelmed by years of sorrow. Well, anyone could see she's innocent. I've even talked to the manager's wife, who wasn't suspicious but rather worried about Mom. And yet, because of unfounded accusations, she was driven to resign. It's sad what happened to the manager. Brian sighed. He says his sister and brother resemble their father. But he is said to be like his mother. Shortly before it was known his mother was pregnant, his parents clashed over business management, leading to their discord. His mother had consulted the then manager, asking, "Can everyone really keep up with such management policies?" Brian's father mistook this for an affair, seeing his newly born son's face, thinking, "The older two resemble me, but this one doesn't. He must be the manager's child." For years, he was less loved in the family, yet expected to take care of his sister in the future, treated more like a tool. Worried about Mom, I didn't cut ties with the family. But if I have to choose between such a family and a new one I might build with Tracy, I choose the latter. As of today, I'm cutting ties with this family. Brian, think it over. Say something, Mom. If Brian leaves, Howard will have to take care of Jenny. His declaration panicked his father. Nevertheless, the content of his words was despicable. He repeatedly expressed his desire not to lose a cash cow son. "I was wrong," his mother murmured. "What?" both his father and sister exclaimed. "I kept hoping that eventually, Brian would be acknowledged as your son. That even a marriage for money could turn into one for love. I persisted out of stubbornness. But that was the wrong choice. I've only caused Brian pain." His mother's words left his father slightly trembling. "What do you mean?" "Please divorce me. I can't take it anymore. Brian, be free. I'm sorry for everything. I gave up arguing because nothing got through to you, and that hurt you. Mom. How can such selfishness be allowed?" While he was lost for words, his father vociferously claimed his own self-centered views. "Even if you don't agree, the law will recognize it. If you won't agree to a divorce, I will take it to court," Brian's mother stated calmly. "Wait. Let's calm down, okay? If we talk it out, I'm sure we cannot understand each other." "How can you say that?" "Though we couldn't see him over the phone." His disheartened tone painted a clear picture of Brian's father slumping down. Just when the line went silent, my mother's voice chimed in. "Sorry to interrupt while you're all heated up, but the frame and painting, you'll need to compensate us $80,000, okay?" $80,000. You said it was $50,000. Jenny panicked. "No, the painting itself is $50,000, and the frame is $30,000. I felt like you weren't really listening, and it turns out you really weren't. You've got to be kidding." Brian's laughter burst through the phone, replacing Jenny's despairing voice. My father and I also shared a laugh, saying, "What a perfect ending," and then we hung up. Afterward, Brian, as he declared, cut ties with his family and even took my surname, expressing a desire to change his name. My father was overjoyed, saying, "I've gained a son." Soon, Brian might officially become his son-in-law. Following the divorce, Brian's parents separated. His father was not only required to split the assets with his mother, but also had to pay compensation for the emotional distress caused during their marriage, with the obligation to also settle the payments for the frame and painting. It was a significant loss. Though they were wealthy, this level of expense was still notable. Freed from her marriage, Brian's mother felt emboldened, or perhaps more relaxed. and began sharing her past grievances with local people. This chatter ended up on a community online forum, leading to rampant speculation that quickly smeared the store's reputation. Though not bankrupt, customer visits dwindled, and the store, once bustling and handling high-end confectionaries, now echoed emptily. They shifted to selling cheaper sweets in bulk, but even that strategy wasn't hitting the mark, resulting in the closure of their second and third stores. It's hoped that the original store won't go under. Brian's brother, once the designated successor, quit the company to start his own business, refusing to take care of Jenny as suggested. He wanted distance from the family, leading to his resignation. Now, Brian's father struggles to manage the nearly bankrupt shop. And his still dependent daughter, Jenny. Why do we know so much about a family we've cut ties with? Well, after Brian left, his brother, who also distanced himself from their family, came to our wedding celebration. He too was dissatisfied with his family's ways, and celebrated Brian's departure as a joyous occasion. Since he still occasionally hears from his family, we get updates through him. The nouveau riche family, disdainful of farmers, has been steadily declining in a somewhat ironic twist. Since then, my husband and I have had 2 daughters. Despite hearing that girls are less troublesome, they are as mischievous as boys, keeping us up day and night. Born close together, they fought constantly in their younger years, and as they grew, they brought home bugs by the dozens, came back muddy, and had their share of fights with friends. These children never cease to bring me challenging news. But, seeing them healthy is what matters most. And though they often fight, they make up quickly. True, they give me quite the headache with their tomboy antics. But watching their sleeping faces at night, I think to myself, I'm glad I had them. And next to me, drooling in his sleep, is my husband, looking adorable to me. Love is truly blind, huh? Soon, our family will grow by one more, aiming for a big family, you know? My name is Rebecca Brown. I've been married for 4 years, but we don't have children. If we can't have children, it's fine as long as we live happily as a couple. And if I have a lifelong, trustworthy best friend, I think that's enough for happiness. One day, my best friend Mary came to our house and said she was pregnant. What? Mary, you're single, right? Are you planning to have the baby alone? I don't plan to have it alone. Looking at my husband, he seemed not so much surprised as he was laughing like he knew everything already. I thought, did he know about this? Not planning to have it alone means you're getting married, right? Oh, so you're finally getting married. Congratulations. That's wonderful. At that moment, I was genuinely happy. Raising a child alone is hard, so getting married seemed like the best option. So, who was the lucky guy? President candidate. Wow, really? Good for you. You always said you wanted to marry a rich man. So you finally caught one? Yes. So, the fortune is mine. The future is secure. Saying this, she smiled challengingly. And then, she made eye contact with my husband Steve. Seeing this, I couldn't help but think, wait. Is this? No, it can't be. Probably my face showed my disbelief, because Mary said mockingly. Yes, the guy is your husband, Steve. What? I turned to my husband in shock, and there he was, making a mocking face too. I prioritized having children. I want a divorce. A dream. I pinched my cheek, but there was no waking up from this reality, and the pain told me it was all true. What do you mean? It's pretty clear. Staying with you, there's no chance of having kids. No kids means no successor. Basically, you're useless. If you divorce me, you'll be in trouble, you know? No trouble at all. I'm guaranteed to be the next president. Indeed, my husband is a candidate for president. But that's just it, a candidate. If he divorces me, he would likely be removed from contention. However, it seems he hasn't considered that at all. That company is already mine. When I become president, I'll kick your father out of the company. I'm sick of him holding me back. Then, the child we'll have will be the successor. With that, the company's future and ours are secure, all thanks to Mary. Are you serious? Of course. I've been waiting for this chance. Even though you're not president yet? I will be soon, so there's nothing to worry about. With that, my husband sat back smugly, and Mary smiled satisfactorily next to him. To think I believed you were my best friend, and you'd steal my husband. Until now, you were the rich girl and I was the poor one. I endured this unfairness. Whenever we went shopping, I could only afford cheap stuff, while you shopped at expensive stores. Do you know how frustrating that was? I can't wait for your father to be kicked out of the company so our roles can reverse. I'll shop at luxury stores, and you'll only afford discounted goods. How exhilarating that will be. You're lying. You stole someone's husband just for that? You wouldn't understand my frustration, so you say that. But it's really lucky you're infertile. Me, infertile? Since you can't have kids, that means you're infertile. That's right. You're infertile, so there's nothing you can do. It's not my fault I strayed, you couldn't have kids. As a president candidate, it's also my duty to have a successor, after all. So what happens if we divorce? Nothing much. Even if you are the president's daughter, it will soon mean nothing. So, you really think that? Yes, I do. You're worthless. Value. Well, fine. If that's how it is, let's get a divorce. I never dreamed my best friend would take you. But if that's your relationship, it's better you two marry for the sake of the child. I felt a great fatigue and was resigned to whatever came next. I had no intention of chasing after a cheater. But there was one thing I wanted to know. I'll agree to the divorce, but how long has this been going on? Oh. It started about 3 years after you got married. So, a year ago. Yes. He consulted with me. We can't have children. We've been married 2 years with no kids, tried treatments, but nothing worked. Without a child, there would be no successor. Indeed, no children then. That's when I suggested he should take a lover. A best friend suggests that? I never once thought of you as a friend. No. That's true. You're the only one who thought we were friends. That's why I made that suggestion to him. And Steve accepted your suggestion. Yes. Indeed, if the lover has a child, that child can be the successor. But why Mary as the mistress? That's simple. A man and a woman are together, and things just happen. So it's not because you two are in love? It's a match of interests. Love will eventually fade away, but mutual interests won't. So, I'll have Mary bear my child, and that child will be my successor. Then, I can be both the father of the successor and the president. In my old age, I can pass the president role to my child, and we will be secure. Calculating. Whether it's calculating or not, as long as we're happy, that's all that matters. Is that truly happiness? Happiness is different for everyone. You're just accepting it, aren't you? Your marriage to me was similar. Our marriage? Yeah, you might have felt love for me, but I never loved you. The only thing I loved was your background. A big company president as a father. Without that, marrying you would have been unthinkable. So that's why you were cooperative with the fertility treatments? Yes, exactly. We needed to find out where the problem was. If it turned out I was the issue, then there would be no hope for a successor. If I couldn't have children with a mistress either, then I'd have to think of another strategy. So, I definitely wanted to clear that up. But, in the end, it turned out I'm not to blame at all, so I could confidently go ahead and have a mistress. I see, that's how it is. Now you understand, right? I don't love you. Now that things are clear, please sign the divorce papers. Fine. Being married to someone who doesn't love me is unthinkable. And, I'll take this house. This house? Yes, this house. There's no mortgage, and it doesn't cost me anything to keep it. There's no reason not to take it. Fine by me. I don't care. Great, I'll live here happily with the child and the three of us. By the way, is the baby a boy? It's not certain yet, but it's probably a boy. What if it's a girl? If it's a girl, then we'll just have to have a second one. Then, I'll marry her off to a corporate heir. A marriage of convenience. Yes, I won't let the children do as they please. They will marry someone who can benefit our company. After all, if we're raising them, they should at least bring us some benefits. Disgusting. That's how the rich are. What an image you have. In this day and age, no one wants parents like that. Say whatever you want. It's not about trends. We have to keep having children and raise them to be useful for the company. That way, the parents make a fortune. That's abuse. It's for the children's happiness. So, leave all the furniture here when you go. I don't understand your so, but okay. It would be a hassle to take the furniture from here. I don't plan on taking anything except what's mine. You talk strangely. Oh, right. Because you bought them with Steve, they're not yours. I can't understand the mindset of the rich. Right, Steve? Yeah. Sorry to ruin your good mood, but... I said that and handed the divorce papers to my husband, then stood up. I went to the bedroom and brought back an envelope. When we had fertility treatments, I didn't tell you the results. You are sterile. Huh, sterile? You thought I was infertile, but it's you who's infertile. No way, you never said anything. If I had told you, you would have been overjoyed to cheat, right? If it wasn't going to happen anyway, you thought anything was okay. But even if I didn't say it, the result would have been the same. That's ridiculous. How could that be? The evidence is right here. He pointed at Mary's stomach, but Mary's face had turned pale. Huh, so this child is. If it turns out the mistress's lover's child, father wouldn't acknowledge it. That's crazy. And I'm passing on the debt to you. Debt? What are you talking about? You'll find out soon. So that's that. Enjoy your newlywed life, I'm done here. I'll come back for my things later. After dropping that bombshell, I left the house. From inside, I could hear Steve's serious voice. What do you mean I'm sterile? If I'm sterile, how could you get pregnant? Whose child is it? That's. There was another man besides me? That's. Tell me everything, spill it all. Stop, don't be violent. I'm pregnant. If the child isn't useful, then there's no point. Why were you cheating with another man? But I just really wanted to get married. I really wanted to be with Steve. You kept saying you'd divorce, but you never did. And a child, we never managed to have one. I thought if I didn't do something, another woman would end up having his child, so I panicked. Another woman? Yes, if I had a child quickly, Steve could relax, knowing the succession issue was resolved. That's true, but I thought my position would be secure if I could have a child. And then, when I really did get pregnant, you said we'd divorce immediately. I thought everything would go well. But who could have guessed that Steve was sterile? Yeah, I'm shocked too. It was all for you, Steve. That's right. It really was. If I'm sterile, then all we need to do is safely have and raise this child. If we make this child the successor, everything will work out. So, no matter what, this child has to be a boy. That's right, if we can't have any more children. Even if this one is a girl, I can have another child with another man. If that child is a boy, he can be the successor. I see. No matter the truth from you, Rebecca, if I deny it and say, look, there is a child, no one can further deny that. If it's you and me, we can make that happen. That's right, this is a match of interests. If it's for making a child a successor, I'll do whatever it takes with other men. And I'll make sure to carry a boy. That's right. Since I don't love you, it doesn't matter what happens with other men. That's right, a perfect win-win. Yes, exactly. Win-win. Rebecca has no children. No matter how things turn out, they have to make this child the successor. That means they have no choice but to make me from a president candidate to the next president. Just to clarify, there's no chance they'll make Rebecca the president, right? That won't happen. No matter that Rebecca is the daughter, she's a woman. There's no way a woman will become the president. That's right. A woman as a president, especially of such a large corporation, just doesn't happen. Yes, that's right. So, you must safely deliver the baby in your belly. With that decision made, the two of them submitted the divorce papers to the city hall. About 2 weeks later, they filed the marriage registration and contacted me with great joy. Rebecca. Ah, Mary. You seem in high spirits. Of course. We just officially became husband and wife. Now there's nothing to worry about. What were you worried about until now? After stealing someone else's husband. You don't think another woman could take him just because you're married, do you? Even if he is taken, I won't agree to a divorce. He can play around elsewhere as he likes. I'll do as I please too. Is that what marriage is? Yes, it's the new form of marriage. If that works for you, then fine. I can't understand it. You're just too rigid. Anyway, congratulations. Now I'm soon to be the president's wife. How about it? Want to go shopping together sometime? You're still the president's daughter, so you can shop elegantly, right? Sure, I'm not short on money, but I'll absolutely not go shopping with you. No need to hold a grudge. I'm not holding a grudge. I just don't need to hang out with someone who's not a friend. Well, that's fine. Do as you like. I've secured my seat as the wife of a large corporation's president. Is that why you called? Yes. I just had to tell you. I see, well understood. I'm busy, so I'm going to hang up now. After hanging up, I looked at the disconnected smartphone and smiled. This is just the beginning. I'll teach you just how selfish and full of holes your actions are. Be prepared. Muttering this, I started to act on a certain plan. A few days later, I called Steve to initiate my plan. Long time no see. Congratulations on your marriage. Hey, thanks to you giving up on me, we're happily married over here. Is that so? By the way, please return the house. What? Return the house? After all this time? You said you didn't want it. I never said I didn't want it. When you said you would take it, I just said I didn't mind. That's why I emphasized it so many times. Me not minding means I don't know about anyone else's opinion. What? What are you talking about? That house is yours, right? I can't afford such a large house. That house is my father's asset. The president's? Yes, when my father got married, he lent it to us for free. So now that we're divorced, it needs to be returned. That's ridiculous. You might think so, but this is reality. You just didn't know the reality. So, you're telling me to get out? That's what it comes down to. All the furniture in that house was bought by my father, so you can't take anything with you. If we're kicked out of here, where are we supposed to go? We're about to have a child. That's your problem, so I don't know. Can't you do something? No, I can't. If you stay there, it'll lead to a lawsuit for unlawful detention. Unlawful detention? You're going to be the president, so it's better for you not to be questioned for a crime, don't you think? That's true, but if you become a criminal, your dream of being the president will vanish. So, it's decided that I'm going to be the president? Yes, you're going to be the president. That's great. Then, there's no problem leaving this house. I might as well rent a luxury apartment. Well, it's up to you what you do. Do you know when the official appointment will be announced? The one about me becoming the president. It should be very soon. Is that so? I'm really going to be the president, huh? It has to be me, no one else could be the president. Congratulations. Ah, thank you. Despite the divorce, you still care about me, you really did love me. I thought. As if. How could you even think I loved you? What an idiot. However, Steve happily ended the call. Sometime later, Steve received his appointment. But the document appointed him as the president of a subsidiary, not the main company. Why am I being sent to a subsidiary? It was supposed to be the main company's president. Upon hearing it was a subsidiary, Mary was furious. No, it's just the first step. I'll be the president at the subsidiary, and if I improve performance there, then it will be the main company. Yes, in about 3 to 5 years, I should be able to become the president of the main company. Really? Yes, really. Naturally. But anyway, I'm still a president now. Good thing I rented this luxury apartment. If I hadn't become a president, I wouldn't have been able to afford the rent. But it turns out the information from Rebecca wasn't false. That's good, if you can really get back to the main company. Did you talk to the president about the child? No, now that it's come to this, there's no need to talk. It's settled that I'll become the main company's president. After that, I'll make sure the current president becomes the chairman. Then, I'll kick that person out of the main company. With that, the company will be mine. Make sure you secure it. Of course. Then you'll have to give birth to about 5 kids, doesn't matter if they're boys or girls. We'll marry them off strategically to expand the company. Leave it to me. However, the subsidiary's performance did not improve as the two had hoped. Has the performance improved? That's the thing, it's completely hopeless. Why? It's been a year? You've been president for a year and it's still hopeless. You can't become the main company's president like this. That's true. I've been trying, but for some reason, the sales just won't go up. Why don't you crack the whip on your employees? Threaten to fire them if they don't get new clients, they'll probably try harder. If there are employees who can't work hard for the company, it's better if they're not around. It'll save on personnel costs. That's a good point. As long as there are a few employees, let them make the others work harder. That's the way. Harassed daily by Mary about progress, Steve took the drastic step of firing employees who couldn't develop new business. As a result, the remaining employees had to handle even more work, and the company's operations started to falter. However, oblivious to this reality, Steve and Mary became tyrants, running the company as they pleased. Then, a personnel transfer notice was issued. There's a personnel transfer notice. Mary, acting like the president's wife, would come to the company every day and boss around the employees. One day, she eagerly read the notice, hoping it was about moving to the main company. What's this? What? It's about Steve moving to the main company, right? No. Rebecca has been appointed as the president of the main company. What? You're joking. Stop joking around. Shocked and panicked, Mary read the notice, and indeed, my name was listed there, Representative Director President, Rebecca Brown. Why has this happened? This is ridiculous. A woman as the president of such a large company. Steve. Go to the main office and complain. Spurred on by Mary, Steve hurried to the president's office. Hey. What's this all about? Arriving at the president's office, Steve slammed the personnel notice on the large desk. Is there something wrong with this personnel notice? Did you find a typo? That's not it. Why are you the president? It was decided by the board of directors. I didn't participate in the board meeting. You're on assignment, right? You don't even have the right to attend the meetings. What, even though I'm on assignment, I'm still part of the main company. That's true. But if someone from the main company is embezzling, they can't really be considered part of it, can they? What? What I had placed on the desk was evidence of embezzlement. It detailed the embezzlement Steve had committed while he was at the main company. You hid it quite cleverly, using your position as a manager, but you didn't think it would be discovered? Silent, huh? Anyway, someone like you could never become a president with actions like these. This kind of thing. Everyone does this kind of thing, don't they? Sure, if you check thoroughly, even a clerk might be taking home pens or making personal copies. But, embezzling such a large amount of money and denying it? Moreover, doing this less than a year after being assigned? The evidence I presented was of the embezzlement at the subsidiary. I don't know about this. I haven't done such a thing at the current company. Do you think I can believe that? This isn't something I did. In reality, the previous president had committed the embezzlement. Knowing this, I had been saving this information to corner Steve. There's evidence right here. You can see it in this ledger. There's unauthorized withdrawal, isn't there? I've just been assigned, I wouldn't do such a thing at the assignment place. Even though you say you've just been assigned, it's been a year. And since you did it at the main office, saying you haven't done it isn't believable. Besides, you have a lot of debt, don't you? Didn't you use it for that? How do you know that? This is a corporation, a major one at that. We thoroughly investigate people we can't trust. When I looked into it, it seems you've borrowed quite a sum. Expecting me to believe you under these circumstances is impossible. Plus, you keep firing employees who don't perform as you wish, burdening the remaining staff with even more work and forcing them to do unpaid overtime. Do you think a company can function this way? Employees aren't robots generating money for you to embezzle. I really don't know anything about it. I haven't done anything. This is a conspiracy. Someone is trying to frame me. Bringing down a small fry like you wouldn't benefit anyone. Or is someone holding a grudge against you? I haven't done anything to be resented by anyone. I thought. I resent you, though. Anyway, normally this would be a case for disciplinary action, but if we fire you, you won't be able to repay the embezzled money. Can I remain as the president? Well, our company will sever ties with you. But I'll give you that subsidiary. Huh, that company for me? Yes. You're going to have a child soon, right? Work hard to grow that company and pass on the president's chair to your child. Of course, you'll have to fully repay the embezzled amount. This way, your future is secure, right? Ah, thank you. Rebecca really does care about me. I truly appreciate it. I thought, no need for thanks. Like you could grow that company. Steve happily returned to Mary, but he was oblivious that the real hell was just beginning. The subsidiary had no funds. Cut off from the main company and with previous misappropriations by the former president, there was no money to pay suppliers. Suppliers were demanding payments, and without their materials, nothing could proceed. Furthermore, employees gradually resigned, requiring severance payments. This made it even difficult to pay salaries. Eventually, Steve was left alone in the company, and the few who came for interviews were worthless. No decent person showed up. Of course, I had a hand in this situation. It's hopeless. Why does everything I do fail? It would be better if the company didn't exist. Thinking this, Steve finally decided to close the company. However, he couldn't resolve the payments to suppliers, who then sued him. With no work and unable to repay, he ultimately declared bankruptcy, leading him to a miserable life. Every day, Mary would berate him, blaming his sloppy planning for their downfall. If you had let me handle it, it would have been fine, but all you told were lies. This is the worst. Mary continued to scream, and the child, frightened by her voice, cried. Steve always had to console the child. Amidst this, a bill for compensation arrived. Huh, what? This bill for compensation? What's going on? It was the compensation from when I divorced Steve. More than a year had passed since our divorce, but I decided now was the time to claim it. Given that we both were presidents, I demanded a significant amount. Steve was shocked, having not anticipated this. I've declared bankruptcy, so I shouldn't have to pay. When the bill arrived, Steve called, screaming. Oh, that's too bad. Even if you declare bankruptcy, you still have an obligation to pay compensation. That's ridiculous. Steve aged rapidly from the shock, his hair turning white. But that wasn't the end, as Mary, burdened by the compensation, left him with their child. Left alone, Steve desperately asked me for a chance to start over, but I had no intention of reconciling with such a calculating person. I told him, I hope you fall into hell. And hung up. After that, Steve, unable to afford the rent for the luxury apartment, moved to a dilapidated apartment. Despite his luxurious tastes, he couldn't do anything about his situation. He tried to start over, but the only company that hired him was a small sales firm. Knowing he had found a job, I decided to send him a bill for the embezzled amount. He said he shouldn't have to pay because he had declared bankruptcy, but embezzlement obligations don't disappear so easily. Despite visiting several lawyers, the answer was the same. When he asked them to defend him, knowing I was the opponent, no one would take his case, and he ended up paying a substantial amount. However, with the compensation on top of the embezzlement money, he struggled, and eventually committed embezzlement at his new job, got caught, and ended up in prison. Now, without the struggle of living, he wouldn't have any troubles until his release, but after that, a massive debt would still be waiting, making his life unbearable. As for Mary, I checked to see how she was doing. She had put their child up for adoption and was enjoying a romance with a wealthy man. However, there was a catch. This man was involved in shady business dealings, and eventually, like Steve, she ended up in prison. The world is full of pitfalls you never see coming.
The weight of silence pressed against my eardrums as I stood beside Jack, my husband's hand cold and lifeless in mine. Marianne's funeral was a stark reminder of how quickly life could change, how swiftly love could be snatched away. The church pews creaked with the shifting weight of mourners, their black attire a sea of grief. I glanced at Jack, searching for a flicker of emotion in his stoic face. Nothing, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the mahogany casket adorned with white lilies, Marianne's favorite. How could he be so detached when we'd just lost the woman who'd been more of a mother to me than my own? Eva, a gravelly voice whispered. I turned to see Robert, my father-in-law, his weathered face etched with sorrow. There's something you should have. He pressed a photograph into my hand, the edges worn and yellowed with age. I recognized it immediately. Marianne and me, laughing at my wedding reception. My throat tightened as I ran my thumb over her beaming face. Turn it over, Robert murmured. Frowning, I flipped the photo. Scrawled in Marianne's elegant handwriting were 4 words that made my blood run cold. Unveil the truth, Eva. I looked up sharply, but Robert had already moved away, melting into the crowd of mourners. My heart raced as questions flooded my mind. What truth? And why me? You okay? Jack's voice startled me. I quickly slipped the photo into my purse. Fine, I lied, forcing a weak smile. Just overwhelmed. He nodded, his expression unreadable. Let's go pay our respects. As we approached the casket, I felt a sudden irrational urge to run. Something was wrong. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the very walls of the church were closing in around me. Marianne was like a mother to me, I whispered, more to myself than to Jack. I can't believe she's gone. Jack's grip on my hand tightened painfully. She wasn't your mother, Eva. Remember that. I jerked away, shocked by the venom in his voice. What's that supposed to mean? Before he could answer, we were interrupted by a stream of well-wishers, their condolences a blur of platitudes and awkward embraces. I plastered on a smile, all the while acutely aware of Jack's eyes boring into me. As the service drew to a close, I found myself drifting towards the back of the church, desperate for a moment alone. I slipped into a small alcove, fishing out the photograph with trembling hands. Unveil the truth, Eva. What did Marianne know? And why hadn't she told me while she was alive? There you are. Jack's voice made me jump. I hastily shoved the photo back into my purse. It's time to go to the cemetery. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As we walked out into the crisp autumn air, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. At the graveside, I watched as they lowered Marianne's casket into the ground. Each thud of dirt on the lid felt like a blow to my chest. I glanced at Jack, expecting to see some sign of grief, but his face remained impassive. I can't do this, I choked out, stumbling away from the grave. Eva! Jack called after me, but I kept walking, my heels sinking into the damp grass. I found myself in front of a weathered headstone, my vision blurring with tears. A hand touched my shoulder, and I spun around, half expecting to see Marianne's kind face. Instead, I found myself staring into the concerned eyes of my father, Paul. Daddy, I whispered, collapsing into his arms. I've got you, sweetheart, he murmured, stroking my hair. What's going on? I pulled back, wiping my eyes. I don't know. Something's not right. Marianne, she left me a message. And Jack, he's been acting so strange. Paul's brow furrowed, his ex-detective instincts clearly kicking in. What kind of message? Before I could answer, Jack's voice rang out across the cemetery. Eva, where are you? I froze, suddenly terrified of my own husband. Paul squeezed my hand reassuringly. We'll figure this out, he promised. But right now, you need to go back. We can't raise suspicions. I nodded, taking a deep breath. As I walked back towards Jack, Marianne's words echoed in my mind. Unveil the truth, Eva. Whatever that truth was, I was determined to find it, no matter the cost. The days following Marianne's funeral blurred together, a haze of grief and unease. I found myself wandering through our house, touching the little gifts she'd given us over the years, a delicate china teacup, a hand-knitted throw, a painting of the ocean she'd done herself. Each item held a memory, a piece of the woman who'd become my second mother. You're moping again. Jack's voice cut through my reverie. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a frown creasing his forehead. I sighed, setting down the teacup. I'm grieving, Jack. Your mother meant a lot to me. And what about me? He snapped. She was my mother. Why aren't you comforting me? The accusation stung. I've tried, Jack, but you won't let me in. You've been so distant. He scoffed, turning away. Not everyone wears their heart on their sleeve, Eva. As he stormed off, I sank onto the couch, my mind drifting back to happier times. I remembered the day Marianne taught me to make her famous apple pie, flour dusting our cheeks as we laughed together in her sunny kitchen. She'd confided in me that day, telling me how grateful she was that I'd brought joy back into Jack's life. He was so lost before you, Eva, she'd said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. You saved him. Now, as I sat alone in our silent house, I wondered if I'd saved Jack at all, or if I'd merely been a bandage over a wound that had never truly healed. The shrill ring of the phone startled me from my thoughts. I answered, hoping to hear my father's reassuring voice. Instead, it was Robert. Eva, dear, I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, I said, surprised. Robert rarely called. Is everything okay? There was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. I found something of Marianne's. I think you should see it. My heart raced. What is it? It's better if I show you in person. Can you come over? Alone? I glanced towards the studio where Jack was working. Of course, I'll be there in an hour. As I hung up, a chill ran down my spine. What had Robert found? And why did he want me to come alone? I scribbled a note for Jack, claiming I was going for a walk to clear my head. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I pushed away the guilt. Something told me this was too important to ignore. Robert's house was eerily quiet when I arrived. He ushered me in, his face drawn and pale. "Thank you for coming, Eva. I didn't know who else to turn to." He led me to Marianne's study, a room I'd always loved for its warmth and character. Now it felt cold, abandoned. Robert crossed to the desk and pulled out a leather-bound journal. "I found this hidden in a false drawer," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I think Marianne was afraid of something or someone." With trembling hands, I opened the journal. Marianne's familiar handwriting filled the pages, but the words made my blood run cold. "Jack isn't who we think he is," one entry read. "I fear for Eva's safety. I have to tell her the truth, but how?" I looked up at Robert, my world tilting on its axis. "What does this mean?" Before he could answer, the front door slammed. Jack's voice echoed through the house. "Dad? Eva? What's going on?" Robert's face drained of color. He snatched the journal from my hands and shoved it into a drawer. "You can't tell him you've seen this," he hissed. "Promise me, Eva." Footsteps approached the study. I nodded, my heart pounding so hard I was sure Jack would hear it. As the door swung open, revealing Jack's suspicious face, one thought blazed through my mind. What terrible secret had Marianne taken to her grave, and how much danger was I in? The memory of Marianne's last day haunted me as I paced our living room, unable to shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It had been a typical Sunday brunch, filled with laughter and the aroma of Marianne's famous blueberry pancakes. How could I have known it would be the last time I'd see her alive? "Eva, you're wearing a hole in the carpet," Jack said, his voice laced with irritation. He sat on the couch, sketching furiously, dark circles under his eyes. I stopped, studying him. When had the man I loved become a stranger? "I'm sorry, I just can't stop thinking about your mother. Her death was so sudden." Jack's pencil snapped. "People die, Eva. It happens." His callousness shocked me. "Jack, she was your mother." He stood abruptly, his sketchbook falling to the floor. As he bent to retrieve it, a folded paper fluttered out. I snatched it up before he could react. "Eva, don't," he started, but I had already unfolded it. My blood ran cold. It was a detailed drawing of Marianne, her face contorted in fear, hands clutching her throat. In the corner, scrawled in Jack's messy handwriting, "She knew too much." "What is this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Jack's face darkened. "It's art, Eva. You wouldn't understand." "Art?" I felt sick. "This looks like you were imagining her death." He lunged for the paper, but I stepped back, clutching it to my chest. "Tell me the truth, Jack. What happened to Marianne?" His eyes, once so warm and loving, now glittered with something dangerous. "You're being hysterical. Give me the drawing." I shook my head, backing away. "I'm calling my dad." Before I could reach my phone, Jack grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard enough to make me gasp. "You're not calling anyone. This is family business." "Let go of me." I wrenched my arm free, my heart pounding. A knock at the door made us both freeze. "Eva? Jack? It's Robert. I need to talk to you." Jack's face paled. He snatched the drawing from my hand, crumpling it into his pocket. "Not a word," he hissed, before plastering on a smile and opening the door. Robert stood there, looking haggard. His eyes darted between us, sensing the tension. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, Dad," Jack said smoothly. "What's up?" Robert hesitated. I found something in your mother's things, a letter. It's addressed to Eva." Jack's facade cracked for a moment. "What? Why would Mom write to Eva and not me?" "I don't know, son." Robert handed me a sealed envelope. "She left instructions for me to give this to you, Eva, in the event of her death." My hands trembled as I took the letter. Jack's eyes bored into me, his jaw clenched. "Well, open it," he snapped. With shaking fingers, I broke the seal and unfolded the paper. Marianne's elegant handwriting filled the page. As I read, my world tilted on its axis. "My dearest Eva, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I pray it was peaceful, but I fear it wasn't. There are things you need to know about Jack, about our family. Things I was too cowardly to tell you in life. Jack isn't who you think he is. He's dangerous, Eva. Get out while you can. Go to your father. He'll know what to do. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you better. Please be safe. And remember, unveil the truth. All my love, Marianne." I looked up, my vision blurring with tears. Robert watched me anxiously, while Jack's face had transformed into a mask of fury. "What does it say?" he demanded, reaching for the letter. I clutched it to my chest, backing away. "Stay away from me, Jack." "Eva," Robert said softly, "what's going on?" But before I could answer, Jack lunged at me, his hands outstretched. I screamed, dodging his grasp and running for the door. As I fled into the night, Marianne's words echoed in my mind. Jack was dangerous, and I was no longer safe in my own home. My heart pounded as I raced through the darkened streets, Marianne's letter clutched tightly in my hand. The cool night air stung my tear-streaked face, but I didn't slow down. I couldn't. Jack's enraged face haunted me, pushing me forward until I found myself at Robert's doorstep. I hesitated, my fist hovering over the door. Could I trust him? The memory of his calm demeanor at Marianne's funeral sent a chill down my spine, but I had nowhere else to go. Before I could knock, the door swung open. Robert stood there, his face a mask of concern. "Eva? What happened?" I stumbled inside, collapsing onto his couch. "Marianne's letter," I gasped, holding it out to him with trembling hands. She said Jack is dangerous, that I need to get away." Robert's face paled as he read the letter. When he looked up, his eyes were filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. "I was afraid of this," he murmured. "You knew?" I felt a surge of anger. "Why didn't you say something?" He sank into a chair, suddenly looking every bit of his 65 years. "I suspected, but I didn't want to believe it. Jack, he's always had a darkness in him. Marianne tried to protect him, to hide it from the world." "Protect him from what?" I demanded. "Robert, what aren't you telling me?" He took a deep breath. "When Jack was a teenager, there was an incident. A girl in his class went missing. They never found her, but Marianne, she found evidence in Jack's room. Bloody clothes, the girl's necklace." I felt the blood drain from my face. "No," I whispered, "that's not possible." "Marianne covered it up," Robert continued, his voice hollow. "She thought she could save him, change him. When you came into his life, we thought maybe." A loud bang interrupted him. We both jumped as the front door flew open, revealing Jack, his eyes wild with rage. "You just couldn't leave it alone, could you?" he snarled, advancing towards me. I scrambled to my feet, putting the coffee table between us. "Jack, please, we can get you help." He laughed, a chilling sound that made my skin crawl. "Help? I don't need help, Eva. I need you to mind your own business." Robert stood, placing himself between Jack and me. "Son, calm down. Let's talk about this." "Talk?" Jack's voice dripped with contempt. "Like you and Mom talked about me behind my back all these years? Treating me like I was broken, like I needed to be fixed. We were trying to protect you," Robert pleaded. "Protect me?" Jack's hand disappeared into his jacket pocket. When it emerged, my blood ran cold. The glint of metal in the dim light could only be one thing: a gun. "Jack, no!" I cried, but it was too late. The gunshot was deafening in the small room. Robert crumpled to the floor, a red stain blossoming on his chest. I screamed, dropping to my knees beside him. "Robert! Oh, God, Robert!" Jack stood over us, the gun now trained on me. "You should have left it alone, Eva. We could have been happy." As I looked up at my husband, the man I thought I knew, I saw a stranger. A monster. And I knew in that moment that my life would never be the same. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jack's lips curved into a cold smile. "We're going on a little trip, darling, just you and me." As he grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet, I made a silent vow. I would survive this. I would unveil the truth no matter the cost. For Marianne, for Robert, and for myself. The door slammed behind us, leaving Robert bleeding on the floor. As Jack shoved me into his car, I prayed my father would somehow find me. It was my only hope now. The car sped through the night, streetlights blurring past as Jack drove with reckless abandon. My mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of this nightmare. Robert's blood-stained face haunted me. Was he still alive? And what about my father? Did he know I was in danger? "Where are we going, Jack?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He glanced at me, his eyes cold and unfamiliar. "Somewhere we can start over. Somewhere no one knows us." I swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "We can't just disappear. People will look for us." Jack's laugh was hollow. "Let them look. By the time they figure it out, we'll be long gone." As we drove, I surreptitiously felt for my phone, hoping to send a distress signal. My heart sank when I realized it was gone. probably left behind at Robert's house in the chaos. Suddenly, Jack's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face darkening. "Damn it," he muttered. "What is it?" I asked, trying to peer at the screen. He shoved the phone in his pocket. "Nothing. Change of plans." The car screeched as Jack made a sharp turn, heading away from the highway and onto a narrow, wooded road. Fear clawed at my throat as trees closed in around us, swallowing the car in darkness. "Jack, please," I begged. "This isn't you. We can get help, figure this out together." He slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop. "This is me, Eva," he shouted, his face contorted with rage. "This has always been me. You just never wanted to see it." As he ranted, my eyes darted around, searching for anything I could use as a weapon. That's when I saw it. A familiar dirt path leading off into the woods. With a jolt, I realized where we were. "The cabin," I whispered. Jack's anger morphed into a chilling smile. "Smart girl, Mom's old writing retreat, isolated, off the grid, the perfect place for us to reconnect." My blood ran cold as memories flooded back. Marianne had brought me here once, showing me her sanctuary. But there had been something off about it, hidden rooms, strange locks on the doors. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Now, the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a cabin, it was a fortress. Jack roughly pulled me from the car, marching me down the overgrown path. As we approached the cabin, a sensor light flickered on, illuminating the weathered structure. "Home sweet home," Jack muttered, fumbling with a set of keys. I knew I had to act fast. This might be my only chance. As Jack struggled with the lock, I took a deep breath and made my decision. I slammed my elbow into his ribs with all my strength. He gasped, doubling over, and I took off running into the woods. Branches whipped at my face as I crashed through the underbrush, Jack's enraged shouts echoing behind me. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stop. Suddenly, the ground disappeared beneath my feet. I tumbled down a steep embankment, landing hard at the bottom. Pain shot through my ankle as I tried to stand. Jack's voice grew closer. "Eva, you can't hide from me." Panic threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced it down. I couldn't give up now. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I dragged myself into a dense thicket, praying the darkness would conceal me. As I huddled there, heart pounding, a new sound cut through the night, a distant siren. Hope surged through me. Had someone found Robert? Were they looking for me? Jack must have heard it too. His footsteps stopped, then quickly retreated back towards the cabin. I let out a shaky breath, tears of relief streaming down my face, but I knew this was far from over. I was injured, lost in the woods, with a dangerous man hunting me. And somewhere out there was the truth about Marianne's death, a truth that Jack was willing to kill to protect. As the sirens grew louder, I made a vow. I would survive this night. I would uncover the truth, and I would make sure Jack paid for everything he'd done. With renewed determination, I began to crawl towards the sound of salvation, leaving a trail of blood and broken twigs in my wake. I stumbled through my father's front door, my clothes torn and muddy, my ankle throbbing with each step. Paul's eyes widened in shock as he took in my disheveled appearance. "Eva! My God, what happened?" He rushed to support me, guiding me to the couch. As I collapsed onto the cushions, the events of the past few hours came pouring out in a torrent of words. Marianne's letter, Robert's confession, Jack's true nature, the cabin in the woods. I told him everything. Paul's face grew grimmer with each revelation. When I finished, he sat in stunned silence for a moment before his ex-detective instincts kicked in. "We need to call the police," he said, reaching for his phone. I grabbed his arm. "No, Jack has connections in the department. We can't trust them." Paul's brow furrowed. "Then what do you suggest?" I took a deep breath. "We need to find proof, something concrete that ties Jack to Marianne's death and the missing girl from his past." My father nodded slowly. "I might know someone who can help, an old colleague who works as a private investigator now. But Eva, this is dangerous. Jack's already proven he's willing to kill." "I know," I said, my voice shaking. "But I can't let him get away with this. For Marianne, for that poor girl, for all of us. We have to stop him." Paul squeezed my hand. "All right, let me make a call." As he stepped away to contact his friend, I limped to the window, scanning the street for any sign of Jack. My nerves were frayed, every shadow seeming to hold a threat. Paul returned, his face grim. "My contact can meet us in an hour. He thinks he might have a lead on where to find evidence against Jack. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My blood ran cold as I read the message. I know where you are. You have something that belongs to me. Bring Marianne's letter to the old warehouse on Elm Street in 1 hour, or Daddy Dearest pays the price. Attached was a photo of my father's house, clearly taken from across the street. Dad, I whispered, showing him the message. He's here. He's watching us. Paul's face hardened. We need to leave. Now. We slipped out the back door, my father supporting me as we made our way to his car. As we drove away, I saw a figure step out of the shadows, watching us go. Jack, where are we going? I asked, my heart racing. To meet my contact, Paul replied, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He might be our only chance to end this. As we sped through the night, my mind whirled. How had everything gone so wrong? How had I missed the signs of Jack's true nature for so long? We pulled up to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. A lone figure stood waiting, his face obscured by shadows. Stay in the car, Paul ordered, reaching for something under his seat. He pulled out a gun, checking it quickly before tucking it into his waistband. Dad, no, I protested. It's too dangerous. He gave me a sad smile. I'm your father, Eva. Protecting you is my job. As he stepped out of the car, a shot rang out. Paul stumbled, clutching his shoulder. I screamed, scrambling out of the car towards him. Another figure emerged from the darkness. Jack, his gun trained on us both. I warned you, Eva, he said, his voice cold. Now it's time to face the consequences. I stood frozen, caught between my injured father and my murderous husband. In that moment, I realized the true meaning of Marianne's words. The truth I needed to unveil wasn't just about Jack's crimes. It was about my own strength, my ability to fight back against the darkness that threatened to consume us all. As Jack advanced, his finger tightening on the trigger, I knew I had to make a choice. Run and save myself, or stand and fight for the truth, no matter the cost. With my heart pounding in my ears, I made my decision. Time seemed to slow as Jack advanced, his gun trained on my father. In that moment, I made my choice. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't cower. I would fight. Jack, stop, I shouted, stepping between him and my father. This ends now. His eyes, once warm and loving, now cold as ice, locked onto mine. You're right, Eva. It does end now. I heard my father groan behind me, struggling to his feet. Eva, get out of here. But I stood my ground. Why Jack? Why Marianne? Why any of this? A twisted smile played on his lips. She was going to ruin everything, just like you're trying to do now. By telling the truth? I challenged, my voice stronger than I felt. The truth, he spat. The truth is, I'm smarter than all of you. I've always been smarter. Marianne thought she could control me, manipulate me with her secrets and her lies, but I saw through it all. As he ranted, I noticed movement in the shadows behind him. The private investigator? I had to keep Jack talking. What about the girl from your past? I pressed. The one who went missing. Jack's face contorted with rage. She was nothing. A stupid, nosy bitch who couldn't mind her own business, just like you, Eva, just like Marianne. So you killed them both, I said, my heart pounding. Your own mother, Jack? He laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the abandoned factory, and that it was easy. A little poison in her tea, and all her meddling was over. And now, a gunshot rang out, cutting off Jack's words. He stumbled, a look of shock crossing his face as he crumpled to the ground. Behind him stood Robert, my father-in-law, his hands shaking as he lowered the gun. I'm sorry, Robert whispered, tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry. I should have stopped him years ago. As Jack lay gasping on the ground, the private investigator emerged from the shadows, quickly disarming him and calling for backup. I rushed to my father's side, helping him sit up. Dad, are you okay? He nodded grimly, pressing a hand to his wounded shoulder. I'll live. Eva, I'm so proud of you. Sirens wailed in the distance as I turned back to Robert. You knew, I said, my voice trembling. You knew what he was capable of. Robert's shoulders sagged with the weight of his guilt. I suspected, but I couldn't. I didn't want to believe it. Marianne and we thought we could protect him, change him. We were wrong. As the police cars pulled up, their lights painting the scene in harsh reds and blues, I felt a strange mix of relief and devastation wash over me. It was over, but at what cost? Jack, now handcuffed and being led to a police car, locked eyes with me one last time. This isn't over, Eva, he snarled. You'll never be free of me." I watched as they drove away, my whole body shaking with adrenaline and fear. Robert approached me hesitantly, his face etched with sorrow. "Eva, I know I have no right to ask, but can you ever forgive me?" I looked at this broken man, this father who had tried so desperately to save his son from himself. In his eyes, I saw the same pain and regret that I felt in my own heart. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I think Marianne would want us to try." As the paramedics tended to my father and the investigators combed the scene, I stood in the middle of it all, feeling both stronger and more vulnerable than I ever had before. The truth had been unveiled, but the cost had been devastating. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't the end of my journey. It was just the beginning. There were still questions to be answered, wounds to be healed, and a life to rebuild from the ashes of everything I thought I knew. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. The truth had set me free, but now I had to learn how to live with that freedom. The courthouse buzzed with tension as I took the stand, my eyes locking with Jack's across the room. His face, once so familiar, now seemed like a mask hiding a stranger. As I recounted the events that led to this moment, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and strength. "Mrs. Lawson," the prosecutor began, "can you tell us about the night your mother-in-law, Marianne, died?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Marianne's final message. "Unveil the truth," she had written, and that's exactly what I intended to do. "I found her in her study," I said, my voice steady. "At first I thought she was sleeping, but then I saw the empty teacup and I knew something was wrong." As I spoke, I watched Jack's face, his jaw clenched, a flicker of something, fear, anger, passing through his eyes. "Did you suspect foul play?" the prosecutor pressed. I nodded. "Not at first, but then I found a letter Marianne had left for me. She warned me about Jack, told me he was dangerous." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Jack's attorney objected, but the judge overruled him. "And what did you do with this information, Mrs. Lawson?" I recounted the harrowing events that followed, my escape to my father's house, the confrontation at the abandoned factory, Robert's shocking intervention. With each revelation, I felt the truth settling over the courtroom like a heavy blanket. When it was Jack's turn to testify, I steeled myself, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. "I did it," Jack said, his voice cold and emotionless. "I killed my mother. I killed that girl years ago, and I would have killed Eva too, if I'd had the chance." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. "Why?" the prosecutor asked, clearly thrown by Jack's sudden confession. Jack's eyes met mine, a chilling smile playing on his lips. "Because I could, because they all thought they were better than me, smarter than me, but I showed them, didn't I?" As Jack's confession unfolded, detailing years of manipulation and violence, I felt a strange sense of relief washing over me. The truth was finally out, in all its ugly glory. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, drained. As they led Jack away, he called out to me one last time, "You think this is over, Eva? It's never over." Outside the courthouse, I found Robert waiting, looking older and more broken than ever. "Eva," he began, his voice cracking, "I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am, for everything." I looked at this man who had lost everything in his misguided attempt to protect his son. "I know, Robert. I know." "What will you do now?" he asked. I thought about Marianne, about her final message to me. "I'm going to live," I said simply. "I'm going to dance again, to create, and I'm going to make sure Marianne's story, and the story of that poor girl, is never forgotten." Robert nodded, tears in his eyes. "She would have been proud of you, Eva, so proud." As I walked away from the courthouse, my father by my side, I felt the weight of the past few months lifting. The truth had been unveiled, just as Marianne had wanted. It hadn't been easy, and the cost had been high, but I had survived. "You okay, sweetheart?" my father asked, concern etched on his face. I smiled, a real smile for the first time in what felt like forever. "I will be, Dad. I will be." The sun was setting as we drove home, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As I watched the colors blend and change, I thought about the future stretching out before me. It was uncertain, yes, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it. Marianne's final gift to me hadn't just been the truth about Jack. It had been the strength to reclaim my life, to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. As I closed my eyes, I could almost hear her voice whispering on the wind. Dance, Eva, live, love, and never stop seeking the truth. And in that moment, I knew that's exactly what I would do.